Hey there everybody, it's Jeff Tidwell here once again with one of my tweet videos for you, going all the way back in time to July 2018. We are going into the archive and discussing some of my old tweets, and of course I do thank you for watching. If you do enjoy this content, please do hit the like and subscribe. Also, while you're down there, I'd like to speak with you, so please do leave me a comment below with your thoughts and commentary on what you're hearing today, and we can get the dialogue started. If you really like the material a lot, you can hit the little bell as well and get the notifications of shorter segments and these long-form tweet videos as well. Of course, I am at Real Jeff Tidwell on Twitter. I'm also on Gab, Minds, Telegram, Parler, Instagram, and if you're not watching this video on BitChute, you're watching it on YouTube. So hello to BitChute and YouTube. I love you both. Those that are on YouTube right now and would like to migrate their content over to BitChute can do it with one click using their importer tool. And of course, as well, you can use Gab's Dissenter app and put comments on any URL online. So if those comments sections were shut down on your favorite YouTube video, wouldn't happen on BitChute, but you know how it is with the Google network. They are rather censorious. And of course, if you are finding my cadence to be a little bit on the slow side, you can hit the 2x speed button and get all of the information in half the time. And as time is the currency, that is double bang for your buck. So please do find that button below and you can get a better deal on your time. So we're going to dig into July 2018. Just a bit here. Now, one thing I might not talk about today, so I'll mention it right up front, is the news yesterday that Jeffrey Epstein was found apparent suicide in his cell. I'm not sure where he was being held. I'm not really following the Epstein story that closely. I do follow Mike Cernovich and a few other select content creators on the Epstein saga. But my opinion right now, and I also did see the purported Share Blue leak of certain people that would be apparently they're employed by Share Blue or Media Matters or any of these David Koch or affiliated groups that would be, you know, sort of paid shills, paid trolls to talk about certain subjects. And apparently they're talking a bit about the Epstein stuff. But my opinion, you know, I did not join the conspiracy choir, okay? So I know that some people are being called a conspiracy theorist for believing in, you know, any sort of foul play, as it were, to do with the Jeffrey Epstein death. You know, the report from the media is that it was a suicide, but again, there are a lot of, you know, pieces, a lot of nuts and bolts to the situation, and a lot of things that for many don't add up. The thing is, they aren't the progenitor of this particular theory that, say, for example, you know, the Clintons were involved, or Dershowitz, or Trump. There's all these different competing theories on it. I haven't fallen in any of these camps, per se. I don't have enough information to make a logical assessment to my standard. And I've seen things like that leak from Share Blue that may or may not have veracity. And we need to make sure that our sources are good, and I can't, you know, confirm. But this also brings to mind a thought about how are we to know, even if a tape is released from Epstein's cell, how are we to know that it's actually real? Because in this day and age of the deep state and the surveillance state, the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, and WikiLeaks Vault 7 revelations about the CIA's technology, you know, and the whole deepfakes, now we have deepfakes that you can watch that are entertainment based. So imagine, you know, what's in Area 51 is another question, but imagine the technology that the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI have to cover up anything that they'd like. You know, so there are all these different factors with Epstein. And some people are saying that it was some kind of, you know, homicide. He was taken out by one of the many people in the establishment. About half the establishment would be taken down if Epstein were to squeal entirely about what happened on, his pedo island or whatever you'd like to call it. So Epstein is kind of eating up the news cycle, but I wasn't talking about that back in 2018, so I figured I'd check in with that and say that, I don't have much of an opinion on Epstein. I know that he is an evil pedophile and a bad guy, a bad hombre, but I don't actually know, how his death came to be. They say suicide. Well, I think at this point in time we need a little bit more evidence before people start to settle down and they turn off their conspiracy analysis. So I call it, as Lionel Nation also says, it's better to call people conspiracy analysts because they're not the progenitor of that conspiracy theory. I don't like that term. That's one of those terms you hear in clouds of peach green tea. You hear that in some kale vapor. You'll hear conspiracy theory as a way to kind of push away any sort of critical thinking. If there are, suspicious elements to a particular case and someone says, well, I don't know, this could be something, there's a lot of people that would have incentive to have Epstein murdered. How much incentive does Epstein have to get out on his own? These are all valid questions, so I think we should ask them and not point at each other and say, well, you're stupid for asking questions. You gotta question everything. And this case with Epstein is pretty fishy. So I don't have a verdict, like I said, but I think it's worth asking questions, and I look forward to more information coming out regarding the Epstein purported suicide. So over time, I've been making tweets about people that I respect. And one that I listed here, I said, let's get the ball rolling with Elon Musk. So Elon is somebody that I respect. I think his entrepreneurial skills, having co-founded PayPal, which we all use PayPal. We don't want to be debanked by PayPal if we say the wrong thing, and they have been somewhat involved in this greater debanking controversy with Chase and with Patreon. PayPal is in that sort of establishment financial system that we need to hold them to account. They haven't done anything egregious yet, but of course Elon hasn't been part of PayPal for a long time. He is now popularly I can't speak today, folks. He's popularly known for his memeing. No, he also does his company Tesla, which is electric cars and rechargeable batteries, lithium ion, and he has SpaceX, which is SpaceX, of course, is putting rockets into space. He's doing aeronautic stuff. Is aeronautic the right term? I think we're talking about what astronauts do, of course. It's astronomy, of course, astronomical research. They do put rockets into space. They have a plan to go to Mars. Seek subject matter experts. Definitely Google or DuckDuckGo SpaceX for more information on what they do. Actually, I do recommend following them on Twitter because you get to see some amazing rocket launches. You get to see a lot of information about that. Of course, Elon Musk also has Neuralink, which is a computer system, some technology that interfaces with the human brain and then goes ahead and converts those signals from the human brain into machine code that a machine can understand. So it basically reads your mind, and they're talking about having read-write capability with Neuralink. So that's really cool. And of course, there is the Boring Company, which is a company that creates these giant boring machines that can create tunnels and do some amazing things. Also create bricks for building using the materials they get from the ground as they're boring under cities and under places where they can create sewer systems. They can create all kinds of underground tunnels using this giant boring machine, which is extremely powerful and rather innovative. So Elon Musk has his fingers in a lot of areas of innovation and technology. And he is very fun to follow on Twitter. Tesla's gone through their ups and downs. I was a shareholder, but full disclosure, I'm no longer a shareholder of Tesla. because they're volatile, and the industry at large, the electric car industry, the renewable energy industry, it is new. It is something where people haven't really become established. Now, I do think Tesla is in pole position, no pun intended, to do a great job as a car manufacturer. I believe they recently signed a contract to open up another center, another facility for manufacturing Tesla cars in China. But they do have factories here in the United States, and that's what I prefer, because I'd like for my fellow citizens to have jobs. So Elon, if you're listening, please do open more factories and manufacturing facilities here in the States, if you could. But I do love your work. If you're watching Elon, now we're focusing on Elon. If you're watching Elon, I do respect you, and I know that a lot of people give you flack. He's one of the more controversial entrepreneurs or tech gurus. I'm not sure if you call them barons of the tech world, or however you'd like to describe Elon Musk. He is a tycoon, if you will, and he has that. There was this historical figure somebody was comparing him to, but he does have a bit of an Edison vibe from me. You know, he doesn't make the innovations himself. He just brings them to a larger audience and creates standards, which is closer to Edison than, say, Tesla. But again, it's good to sort of aim higher than your actual level. You know, always, that's why a lot of people, not all people, can't speak for, gross generalization, but a lot of people believe in a higher power to bring them strength from beyond their own inner strength. They need something greater to aspire to, not just themselves. Because when you aspire to just make yourself God, to make yourself the number one thing in the universe, you have nothing to look forward to. And that can lead to, well, I'm no psychologist, but a little bit of depression. So I love you, Elon. Keep it up. Hope Tesla does well. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about Neuralink. So. Tweets. So here's an interesting tweet that I shared about Cunningham's Law. Cunningham's Law. And what Cunningham's Law is the best way to get the right answer on the internet is not to ask a question. It's to post the wrong answer. And so then I go ahead and I include hashtags Cunningham's Law, fact-based, facts matter, and facts matter here. And they do, because on this channel, my ethos is, of course, to try to get to the truth, which may lie between two or more sides on any given topic. It's not always an absolute position that works. Sometimes you need to think outside the box, hear everybody out, and then find the truth lying somewhere in between. Do the scientific method and reach a higher conclusion, a higher truth. But sometimes when you're dealing with promotion and getting publicity, sometimes the most helpful, easy, straightforward, Occam's razor way to get a bit more information is to say the wrong thing, because people will rush in. They will rush in to go ahead and correct you, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing for them to come in. People will clarify your position for you. They'll go into the comment section. If it isn't there, check out Dissenter by Gab and add the comment section that is missing. But of course, they'll add the correct answer. And so you can correct your mistake, and it's all very organic. It's a crowd-sourced kind of situation. And you do see this also being utilized in the news as well. You'll see President Trump use a figure. Now, it might be mind-reading to say that he's intentionally doing it, but Donald Trump will make mistakes. Okay, he will make linguistic mistakes. He'll make verbal mistakes. He'll say the wrong thing. And anything that he says that's the wrong thing, if he makes a typo, or if he says the wrong thing in a speech, like he says that there are airports in 1776, if he says something like that, look how often it's spoken of. Look how much it's reported. And then think that some of these things that are, it's part of something else that gets more attention as a result of the mistake. The news media will report it. People will want to see it. They'll want to, especially as detractors, they'll want to point to the mistake and say, no, you're wrong. And sometimes they even get into a situation where he'll lowball something, where he really should be exaggerating. Like Donald Trump, President Trump, is known for hyperbole, being directionally accurate and saying things very hyperbolically, over positive. Or if something's bad, he'll go over negative on it and really try to drive it home like that. But, he'll say the wrong thing and everybody will rush to say, well, you're stupid, this is right. But sometimes they'll actually say something, he'll lowball something. Like, for example, Cunningham's Law, he'll say the wrong statistic for, and this isn't really a great subject, it's a darker subject, but the immigration, the fact that so many people that come across the border through trafficking, child and women being trafficked, children and women being trafficked, drugs. But these people are being, they're being raped. Let's be frank and let's be honest about the dangers of crossing. It's very sad. It's very awful what's happening at the southern border with these people that are migrating here illegally. They are not safe. But he was saying, 33% of women that come over the border illegally are being raped. And then the media and the fact checkers said, no, Mr. Trump, you are trying to bring attention to this issue, but it's even greater than you say. It's even greater. It's 40%. It's 50%. So they give a more accurate answer. He doesn't even have to do the work. He gets corrected. Now, if you do this too much, I'm not sure what the effects might be. Your credibility might drop. But again, the best way to get the right answer on the internet is not to ask a question. It's to provide the wrong answer. So again, I do have my disclaimer at the end of every tweet, video, but I'm not trying to spread misinformation or disinformation. I'm just trying to say, if you say the wrong thing, somebody's going to correct you, and you know what? It's for the best, because you get to a higher truth. So Cunningham's Law, very common with, and AOC does the same thing. If she says something outrageous that people will report on, that the right will go crazy about, they'll say she's a nutso, she's a socialist, commie crazy. The Trump supporters, and the MAGA crowd, the right, they'll go crazy. But the thing is, they're talking about her. They're giving her attention. They're giving her publicity. And those that know the publicity industry know there's no such thing as bad publicity. You want to get people to talk about you. You want to get people to share your message. Because, you might think that when somebody makes a mistake, like, oh, it's so bad. Trump said the wrong thing. He used the wrong word. You might think that might hurt his credibility. But the fact is that he's trying to get out a greater message. He's trying to get out a message about immigration, or he's trying to get it out about lowering drug prices, or whatever it might be. And then he says something at the end of a speech or at the beginning, or just throws a word in there, either intentionally or unintentionally, and reporting attention goes up. So there's incentive to get it wrong. And again, don't make it an addiction, but it is an interesting way to get people involved and to get the dialogue going. So, rather interesting. When I saw Clinton trending, my heart swelled. I thought that Hillary had announced her 2020 run. Now, I don't believe that Hillary Clinton will run for president in 2020. That's something that some people like H.A. Goodman will say that. I don't think she's running. But I did see the Clintons trending the other day with the Epstein Clinton body count and Clinton's list, because Bill Clinton did go to Epstein's private island they call Pedo Island, and he did fly on his plane. And of course they'll try to tie it to Orange Man. They'll try to tie it to Donald Trump, the president of the United States, by saying, oh, well, he knew him 15 years ago when he traveled on his brother's plane and blah, blah, blah. Really, I don't like to get between the two sides, the Democrat and Republican echo chambers and the sort of media macro simulation, the narratives. I like to watch, and I don't want to get too involved in, oh, Donald Trump killed Jeffrey Epstein. Hillary Clinton killed Jeffrey Epstein. Oh my God. Like it's one or the other. It can't be another. It's like, who else could it be? Could it have been Jeffrey Epstein? Very possibly. But we never know because we don't have the footage. And nowadays, when we have WikiLeaks and all these other groups dropping leaks back and forth, we have sort of a peek behind the curtain, as it were, more transparency than we used to. You used to be able to soar a media narrative over the public's head and just say, look up at the stars, look and behold, and that's it. They would largely believe it. And anybody that had a contrary position on whatever story it was, would be a conspiracy theorist. Oh my God, they're a conspiracy theorist. But sometimes you wait long enough on those conspiracy theories, and they do become conspiracy fact. So it's rather interesting the way that the public perception is, like how I actually wanted to say as well that I had an interview with Ben Goldstein. Ben Goldstein interviewed me the other day, so you can definitely check that out in the description below. I'll include a link for that interview on his channel. And we were talking about how, and I made this analogy. Now, analogies are normally bad for persuading, but of course, making an analogy to describe a system makes sense. So I said, well, we're in a situation, notably when they're talking about, whenever the media cycles back around to white supremacy, or white nationalism, or there's KKK and neo-Nazi members on every corner. It's almost, people start to believe that narrative. Now, there are still malevolent otherists. There are white supremacists. There are black supremacists. There are all kinds of people. There are the anti-white identitarians out there of Antifa, and the disciples of the modern religion of social justice. They are out there spreading racism and generally spreading hate, although they have an altruistic lens. They try to frame it as egalitarian, but of course, again, it's all about otherism, may it be altruistic or malevolent. But of course, if they spread that it's all about the white supremacists, they're the Satan, they're the thing we should be morally panicked about, as moral panic is a modern religion. So if everybody, about 70% of the people, hear this story that white supremacy is ramping up, and again, white nationalism, the ethno-state, these things are out there, but it's a question of to what degree. Like, have you run into a white supremacist on the street? Somebody that just says the race of white Caucasian people is better than other people. Do you hear that? If you hear that, leave me a comment below with your thoughts on what you've seen and heard in the real world involving these things. But largely, my exposure to it has been through the news when they talk about it. And if everybody's following this narrative, it's like if they started to say, whether it's true or not, there's some truth to it. I think Tucker Carlson said it was a hoax. Tucker Carlson said it was a hoax, which I think is a bit of an exaggeration, but it's still not as prevalent as the news would have us believe. They're reporting on it constantly. Of course, until Epstein offed himself or didn't off himself. This is how the media cycle goes. It just goes in a circle. But if they were to convince us, say, for example, that frogs were pink. Frogs are pink, they'd say. And they'd repeat that message again and again, put it through our neural pathways, let our confirmation bias, upon hearing it from an institutional source, a trusted source, CNN, Fox News. If you trust those two, I don't know what to tell you. But again, if you're listening to the news and you trust your sources, you'll hear that, frogs are pink. So if you keep on hearing that again and again, when someone comes in and says, wait a second, frogs are green. Frogs are green. You listen to them, and if you've been enraptured, just as some people have been enraptured with Orange Man Hitler or just the general. There are all these white supremacists that are Republicans. And they're always only Republicans. They're never Democrats. There's never any racism. The Democrats are always perfect saints. That narrative, if you hear that again and again, it just becomes accepted. And your cognitive dissonance muscle doesn't get worked out. It gets atrophied. And you start to just reject anybody that says, well, the news might not have it right. They might be over-reporting this issue. But, who's more credible? Your friend that says that frogs are green? Or the news, which is a bunch of experts, academics, people that have experience with business and state and entertainment that are, they're your trusted voices. They're the ones you come home to every night. You come home to Rachel Maddow. And you listen to her voice, and just when she says something, it has the right amount of veracity. It has the truth. The truth comes off of her lips, especially when she's talking about Russia. These trusted pundits. But again, some people are living in that macro simulation. They're in the echo chamber where, they know what's outside, that's wrong think. What's inside is right think. And if they just listen to their media sources, to the voices they trust, they cast out anybody that goes against the narrative as a sexist or a racist or bigot, misogynist, anti-humanist, otherist, whatever it might be that floats their boat and casts the light of Satan on these other individuals, makes them deplorable, as it were. If they cast that out and they stay inside that echo chamber, well, that's their choice. I don't mean to judge, but you might not be getting the full picture. You might not be getting the full reality. If you just listen to Breitbart or if you just listen to Huffington Post, you need to hear both. You need to listen to both and come to your own conclusions from there. That's the scientific way. So, Clinton. She will not be running for president in 2020. That ship sailed at least 3 times. The 2000 primary, the 2008 primary, the 2016 general. Yeah, I don't think 4th time is the charm for Hillary Clinton. So here is a tweet that is about, I think it's in 4 or 5 parts here, but we're going to take a closer look. These are the points in the video where you might want to hit the 2x speed button to get all the information in half the time and get past these parts where I'm looking for tweets. All right. So continuing the topic we were just on a moment ago regarding, listening to both sides, as I often talk about in my videos. I have a new video out, Hearing Both Sides. So check that out on my channel, both on BitChute and on YouTube. Some of the videos from YouTube don't migrate over to BitChute, so definitely check out both channels if you're interested in my content. And I thank you in advance. So here is a tweet, a series of tweets on fake news. On fake news. Don't be gaslit and don't be fooled. Remember, politics is a post-truth game. Politics is a post-truth game. Now, this is an inconvenient truth for propagandists. If their audience becomes aware of other narratives, the spell is likely to become broken. We are their customers. So be ready to shop around. And then I go into some shopping tips. Shopping tips. Number 1, keep an open mind. Be willing to listen to all sides of an issue from all observers, no matter their reputation, ideology, etc. Number 2, Read entire news articles beyond the headline and the lead. Number 3, be wary of heavy editorializing and journalists' mind reading. Hashtag fake news. So it continues here. Shopping tips number 4. Question everything you hear, see, and read. There's always another question. Absolutism will not be your friend in a post-truth world. And that is true, by the way. I've talked about how clown world actually lies between postmodernism, which is largely post-truth framings of reality, and absolutism. Okay, when everything is a construct, and yet you're willing to assign definitive labels to things, set definitive associations, well, it can create a dicey situation, and you better find your clown makeup, because that's where you're headed. Number 5, multiple outlets reporting the same story based on anonymous sources shouldn't be considered corroboration. Hashtag, once again, fake news. Another shopping tip here, number 6, communicate. When reading between the lines and determining bias or integrity in journalistic outlets, perhaps extending to all social media, we must keep in mind our own confirmation bias, open discourse, information sharing, and incorporating tips 1 and 4. 1, once again, is keeping an open mind, listening to all sides. And number 4 is questioning everything you see, hear, and read. Okay, so let's start from the top. Don't be gaslit and don't be fooled. Remember, politics is a post-truth game. So, yes, politicians will say whatever they need to say to get elected. That includes making big promises and, of course, not really, addressing any of the negatives to do with their campaign. If they make a gaffe, if it's strategic to apologize, they may apologize. Now, I say don't apologize too often because that can create a bit of a sense of weakness about your campaign or about your person. If you're always apologizing and trying to seek the salvation, you're fighting against the prophets of different modern religions telling you, well, you're not following the code of political correctness, or you're not doing this right, or you said the wrong word. They're just trying to control you. And if you're a leader in politics, you want to be a leader. Leaders don't get led around by followers of any given ideology. They go their own way. They do that scientific test. They A/B. They try to find the answers to difficult questions by checking around, not just defaulting to the Bible of their choice. May it be the modern religion of censorship, getting rid of all the bad, again, subjective information out there, all the bad speech, all the bad voices, all the bad people, all the bad topics, all the bad, reasonable arguments that you just don't happen to agree with. But in politics, they don't have to stick to the rules. It's, they say that, politicians lie. Okay, well, that's pretty obvious. I mean, that's one of those things that you actually have to grow up a little bit and realize, like, when you first get out there. Now, I'm not saying that politicians might not believe what they're saying. They might be using hyperbole. We've certainly seen Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump and all these different people use a ton of hyperbole, AOC. But they might believe what they're saying. They might just not understand certain things, and they might be going on certain preconceptions. But in general, you can say almost anything, and as long as you say it the right way, if you use the right words, if you use what they call weasel words, if you say like may, could, should, would, blah, 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 there's all these different ways you can add a layer of uncertainty to your speech. And when you're dealing with something like linguistically like politics, where you're making these giant promises and you're saying things that are so often taken out of context that it becomes a game to find, like I said, no publicity is bad publicity. You can say something outrageous or something that's just a little wrong, and it might get more reported, so that the bulk of your message is there. And this one little wrong thing is why everybody's looking at it, but they're getting the bulk of your message. But the fake news, this goes for, I don't like to put like a blanket term over every single, news outlet in the mainstream or in the independent or anywhere, the mollusk middle media of your, Young Turks and InfoWars and so forth. I don't want to put a blanket on it, but fake news just means that you're, embellishing on the news. And people all throughout journalism have gotten these kinds of criticisms. Quillette recently published a hoax. They published a hoax article that was supposed to be from the perspective of a DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, perspective, and it turns out to be a hoax. And they also apparently embellished a little bit on that, and that would be fake news. If the person is editorializing a lot and then using, things that aren't necessarily true, but then adding words, adding adjectives, framing reality in a sort of duplicitous and not really, might be lying by omission. There's all these different techniques they can use to make it fake news, to make it something that's not exactly what was said in reporting, using a very thick editorial lens. So politics is post-truth. That's why they say whatever they want. Now, this is an inconvenient truth for propagandists. If their audience becomes aware of other narratives, the spell is likely to become broken. So what this means, of course, is that propagandists need to keep you, ideally, in an echo chamber. They don't want you to hear conflicting information. They want your cognitive dissonance to bounce off anything that contradicts the narrative that they have tried to place through their messaging, repeated again and again into your brain. They're trying to make sure that conditioning, that story, that narrative about the bigger picture stays intact. So if somebody else comes out and says on Twitter or Reddit or 4chan, wherever it might be, Gab, for instance, if they come out with something that is contrary to the narrative that the propagandist is putting forward, if there's a larger media collusion, if there's just this larger narrative, like Russiagate, for instance, they put out, anything that contradicts that makes you guilty by association with the bad guys. Hey, you're questioning Russiagate, and you're on the left? You're on the left, and you're questioning Russiagate? You must be a Russian spy. And that's what they say about Tulsi Gabbard, and they say it about anybody that goes against the narrative. You're with Russia. You're Putin, Kremlin, Russia, Moscow. Orange man red. Orange man communist Russia, Soviet Union. They'll go down that road. Anybody that questions it. So we are their customers. We are the customers of the information that the media is peddling. So I say it's good to shop around. So, the shopping tips. Number one, keep an open mind. Of course, it's always good to consider that everything that has a positive also has a negative. Everything that has one side here has another opposite side. There's always two different ways to look at the same situation. That's, we all have 7 billion people on Earth, right? So that's 7 billion different perspectives on reality. So there's always at least two ways to look at every situation, and you need to be willing to listen to all sides of an issue from all observers, no matter their reputation, ideology, and other qualifying factors. So if you listen to a show like, say, for example, Joe Rogan, the Joe Rogan Experience, he has people that are all over the place ideologically. He'll have people from the right, people from the left. He'll have people in between. He'll have libertarians. He's had socialists. He's had all kinds of people, classical liberals, traditional liberals, whatever label you want to throw on it, conservatives. He's had right-wingers, left-wingers. He listens to all sides, and he comes to his conclusion, which happens to be probably in the sphere of left libertarian, but he doesn't care about their reputation, their ideology. He just wants to listen. He wants to listen. Joe Rogan listens. And that's what I'd like to do too. I'd like to hear everybody out. Again, I might not agree, and I might get trolled, and I might get people that are just not happy to hear that I'm spouting the opposite ideology or another conflicting alternative perspective, but I do want to hear them. Again, if it's something that I've heard a million times before, I might be a little less receptive, but again, there might be a new angle on an old idea, so that's always worth taking note of. Listening to all sides of an issue from all observers, not pointing to somebody and say, well, they have a bad association. They talked to the wrong person once. As my friend Tyler says, they have guilt by conversation. They spoke to the wrong person once. They talked to a neo-Nazi. They talked to an Antifa member that had hit somebody over the head with a billy club the other day. And I say, well, that's not the greatest situation, committing violent acts, but I'm still going to talk to that person. I'm still going to allow myself to associate with them. We have freedom of association in this country. Like, we have this right to talk to who we want to listen. Because Scott Adams actually had a great little segment on this where he talks about how, do you think that these negative people, these bad association people, may it be warranted or not, do you think that they are going to make me worse if I talk to them? If you talk to them, will they make your ideology, your view of the world worse? Or will you make them better? I think I will make anybody that I step into the room with better. That's my position on it. I don't like to, cast... I do, of course, don't want to speak to somebody like Jeffrey Epstein. But again, I would still talk to him. I'd want to hear what he has to say. I'm not restricted by his evil. It doesn't mean that I become evil by association for talking to an evil person. It means that I'm gathering information about my reality, and it may be uncomfortable, it may be dark information, it may be not the most savory person to spend time with, and I probably wouldn't spend much time with them, but talking to them is totally on the table. I don't like guilt by association. I am not really a collectivist in that way. So I say here, shopping tip number 2, of course, is read entire news articles beyond the headline and lead. So we have a culture where there is so much information coming in at all times from across the internet. You have your news aggregators, you have your social media, you have your dedicated news sites, you have your Google ads, you have your searches you can do on Google, DuckDuckGo, Bing. If you're desperate, if the other 2 domains are down, you can go to Bing. But of course, people do just see sometimes a headline, which could be very misleading. A headline or a lead, the first couple of paragraphs, the first couple sentences can be a lot different from the content of the rest of the article. So it can be you can skew your perception of reality to just pay attention to the headline and the lead, the meat of the article. If you're interested enough, again, this is all voluntary. You have the liberty to completely ignore what I'm saying, of course, and read the articles you'd like to read. But I'm saying that if we go by headlines, this is as a guideline, if we go by headlines only and leads only, we're not getting the whole picture. We're going by what they want us to generally ride with. Now, if you look at the New York Times, they came under some fire recently from the anti-Trump community when they changed their headline about Trump and the shooting, the Dayton and El Paso shootings, and of course the Gilroy, the Garlic Festival. There was a headline, I don't recall it at this time, but of course, if you remember, leave a comment below with that. But they had a sort of pseudo-positive, by New York Times standards, headline for Trump, And because of the angry mob, the modern religion of outrage culture, of course, coming into effect, trying to get some dopamine, moral virtue, and universal truth by enacting moral authoritarianism, going out and saying, look, I think that you got this wrong. Orange Man bad. You have to make him badder. There was a slight chance that Orange Man decent in your headline. So let's change that to Orange Man bad because that fits my confirmation bias and my perspective. And I am your customer. I am the one. These readers are the customer. They are the one getting the information, getting the headline, buying the product, paying for the New York Times. So give us our Orange Man bad, damn it. That's kind of what they do. So I say, read the entire article, get all the information, don't settle for just the headline. But when you're reading, be wary of heavy editorializing and journalists' mind reading. So when I talk about fake news, a lot of it is this editorializing and mind reading, adding sensationalism, adding extra words, adjectives, even adverbs, and just adding this frame of what happened, adding a story, adding a narrative that wasn't there in the first place. That's fake news. That's one definition for fake news. When you just, don't report the whole story, just report the positives or just report the negatives. Can't do that. You have to have the full bag, warts and all. And otherwise, you're lying by omission and you're creating fake news. So, and of course, a lot of journalists mind read, of course, the Fine People hoax, the Charlottesville hoax, with people saying that Donald Trump called neo-Nazis, white supremacists, KKK, whatever it might be, fine people. And of course, the only way to come to that conclusion definitively, is to mind read that he meant to say what he said. But of course, if you take the full context, and I do have a video out, President Trump's comments during the Charlottesville tragedy, de-hoaxed. That's also on my channel here on YouTube. I don't think it's on BitChute yet, so definitely check it out on YouTube. But if you look at the full context, you understand that he does condemn white supremacists and neo-Nazis totally. So anything else from there, it's all just, I've seen people have cognitive dissonance and mind read and say, well, there were people, he said the night before, and there were people there the night before that were bad people, and they were marching with the tiki torches, and you say, well, look, we don't know the full demographics. People at the New York Times, Scott Adams, a bunch of other people have talked to people that were at Charlottesville in this period, and they were not racist. They weren't any part of these groups. They might have been liberal or conservative, but they weren't bad people. They were fine people. And the president, you'd have to mind read that he knew every single person that was there. You'd have to mind read a lot to come to this conclusion that the president is, racist, or that he called neo-Nazis and supremacists fine people. So that kind of mind reading, though, becomes second nature when you're following the mainstream media and all of their attempts to mind read the president. Oh, he's angry, he's this, he's that. And they do it to everybody. They do it to everybody else too. People they like and people they dislike. They try to paint a picture in the mind of the reader, of the customer, showing that, giving an angle. Well, Trump's mad, Trump's angry, Trump's bothered by this. Trump gets mad when white supremacists are condemned. That's what they'll say, things like that. How many times does somebody have to say, I condemn, I condemn, I condemn? That they act like you can just turn around one minute and say, oh, I hate this thing, I dislike this thing, I condemn it, and then one slip of the tongue later and you're supporting it again? It's asinine. It's not real. It shows that it's a game, that it's a post-truth game. Like, if you look at it that way, you look at it that way. If you believe that the president is an otherist, just as people believed with Obama derangement syndrome, that he was some kind of Kenyan-born socialistic, Stalin, Lenin figure. Actually, the biggest kind of derangement syndrome I can remember other than Trump derangement syndrome, which is huge, is of course Clinton derangement syndrome. I mean, people in my family, they were saying that Bill Clinton was in the Revelations in the Bible, in the New Testament. It was the mark of the beast. He was in there. You know, he was and I haven't actually read Revelations, but he was in there. Like, it was all being foretold, and there was this whole, moral panic and this hysteria about the upcoming millennium, the year 2000. Of course, I am a millennial. I was 16 in 2000, but Bill Clinton, people that were on the evangelical, the religious right, they were, of course, many of them saw Bill Clinton as some kind of evil figure, satanic even. I mean, it was insane. And of course we say that now about Obama derangement syndrome, saying that he's anything but a wonderful two-term president that, yes, droned a lot of people and did all the things that presidents do as it pertains to the military-industrial complex and crony capitalism and all the things, all the problems that Trump continued and inherited. Obama did some great things. He brought us back into decent relationship with Cuba. Not great yet, unfortunately. And then, of course, Trump derangement syndrome, Orange Man bad, Orange Man Hitler, concentration camps, white supremacists on every corner. The president is a malevolent otherist, blah, 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 blah. So a lot of this has to do with mind-reading intentions, just as gaslighting is. Like gaslighting. And they say, you're gaslighting. That's them mind-reading, that your intentions are to deceive and to create a false reality. And they might be right if you're a bad person. Check out my video, A Pro Tip on Lying, for more about that. But it's all about mind reading. It's all about trying to find and paint this picture that may or may not be concrete. It might be rather abstract, maybe a little Picasso-like. So number 4 shopping tip is question everything you see, hear, and read. There's always another question, and there always is. Absolutism will not be your friend in a post-truth world. So if you really settle in to that echo chamber and you say, well, everything outside that narrow Overton window of acceptable dialogue, acceptable opinions, credible sources, credible opinions, if everything outside is extreme, is wrong-think, and if I don't stick with the group, I might get ostracized. Well, you get people that begin to, their critical thinking starts to break down because they're not questioning what they see, what they hear, what they read. They just go with the modern religion of institutions. They say, well, it came from a state source. We have to trust the state, trust the government, right? Oh, it came from media? It came from the news media. Their job is to tell the truth, where facts matter, fact-based truth tellers. Like, if we can't trust the media, who can we trust? If I can't trust, Fox, CBS, ABC, CNN, if I can't trust them, who can I trust? They get into that mentality. And they'll stay in the echo chamber of their side. They'll say, well, I only listen to Fox. I only listen to Hannity. Or they'll say, I'll listen to Maddow. Her voice is comforting to me. She's never led me wrong before, except on Russia. But of course, this is the way we are. We get used to it. We are creatures of habit, of course. But settling into one perspective when people are constantly lying and framing things differently, and they're using postmodern, post-truth framing, and then you settle into that one opinion, well, it's easier to manipulate you. If you're only listening to what the macro simulation states, the code that's allowed, you are by definition more controlled. And that can lead to a number of outcomes, some that might be beneficial to you and some that might not be, depending on the goals you have for society. So, like I said, there is media collusion, not only with political parties like the Republicans and the Democrats, proven by WikiLeaks, DNC leaks, and of course the Podesta emails, in which we learned that they were sending news outlets like MSNBC were sending their articles to John Podesta and the Clinton team, the DNC team. And of course, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, they're sending these articles for editing, for review, because they don't want to actually give this completely unbiased perspective. They'd like it to be editorialized by the Democratic Party right away, just like that. So you'd see that, but you also see this. Number 5, shopping tip, multiple outlets reporting the same story based on anonymous sources shouldn't be considered corroboration. Because just like the Sinclair PSA, the Sinclair Broadcasting PSA, and I did do a video on that, so check that out on my channel. As we saw in that PSA, all of these networks are getting the same message to give you, to give me. So if they're going by anonymous sources and they're all going by the same exact story, and they say, well, anonymous source from within this government organization says blah, 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 and then they're all saying the same thing, it's all the same story. It's most likely all the same source. And if it's anonymous sources, you really don't know if there's any veracity to that, or if it's just hearsay, or if it's just a narrative, if it's just contrived. So I do say that, don't believe just because multiple outlets report the same exact story that we should believe it. Now, Scott Adams does have a little bit of a rule. He says if you see the same story reported on both sides, both the left and the right, the Democrat and the Republican side of the media echo chambers, the media macro simulation, you hear that same story, the likelihood is it's a bit more credible than if it were reported on just the left or just the right. So use your own judgment, of course. But I say, multiple outlets don't mean corroboration, because they can corroborate each other. And I talk about crafting that narrative in my video about the PSA, the Sinclair Broadcasting. So finally, the final shopping tip is communicate. When reading between the lines and determining bias and integrity in journalistic outlets, and that probably goes for all social media, we must keep in mind our own confirmation bias. The open discourse, the information sharing, and incorporating tips 1 and 4 can certainly help us when we're in this situation. So, again, this goes back to not just falling on that modern religion of institutions, not falling on the state, media, or academia to give us the right answer. We should look all around, and especially on opposite sides of a debate, before coming to a conclusion. We shouldn't go into this absolute world where one side is always right and the other side's always wrong, and it's just, that's not the way reality actually works. Sometimes the left is right, sometimes the right is right. Sometimes the authoritarians have a better idea, sometimes the libertarians down there in the comment section below have a better idea about how to do things. It all is situational. That's why I say it's a political sphere. I don't like to get caught up in the rigid nature of the political compass, because I don't think it's really about a dichotomy of left and right so much as authoritarian and libertarian. How much freedom are we willing to give up for security, as Benjamin Franklin would note? So communicating means talking. Keep on talking. Don't censor people you disagree with. Don't call for the deplatforming, depersoning, debanking, demonetizing, disincentivizing, and so forth. Keep those avenues open. Make sure that citizen journalism is remaining strong into the 2020s. Subject matter experts should be sought. They might have more insight on certain issues, but I don't like to get into this idea that, not everybody can actually speak, that only certain people, that only the experts can speak. I call that the first phase of censorship, self-censorship. Only the qualified are allowed to speak. Now, if they have better sources, if they have more, verifiable information, that is virtuous. But again, people are being told that, you have to be an expert. You have to be credentialed to say things, to talk, be part of the online dialogue. And I find that that's not really intellectual. Like, I wouldn't call it pseudo-intellectual. I just say that it kind of undermines the intellectual discourse and the search for knowledge, wisdom, information. So, yes, making sure we question everything, keep an open mind, and talk, communicate. Don't be afraid to speak to anybody, because they're just people. Institutions are just people. Celebrities are just people. And of course, they can be wrong. I can be wrong. We can all be wrong. So it's important to make sure that we keep a pro-information frame on reality. And I say we need an Internet Bill of Rights so people's privacy and their voices are protected. 2 more tweets for you today. So there was a link here from New York Magazine. Republican investigator Trey Gowdy stops pretending, admits this is politics. Talking about, I think it was either Benghazi or Russiagate. What was he talking about here? This is politics. It's a post-truth realm. Yeah, so I say here, this is politics. Russiagate is politics. Benghazi was politics. It can be entertaining, though my interest drifts when it becomes clear nothing of consequence will happen. Like in the Manafort investigation. Just Manafort goes away. No bad things happening to Orange Man. It's a taxpayer-funded dog and pony show. And perhaps I say it's time for smaller government. Because, it's all theater. People don't realize that when they're watching, Jim Acosta talking to President Trump and they're seeing all the things that are happening. We have this layer of separation between the reality of politics, the real power moving around, and the show. What Scott Adams refers to as the show, that is political theater, that is this larger picture that isn't just about policy. It isn't just about persuading people. It's this whole zeitgeist, paradigm. In the past few years, we've been moving in a more nationalistic direction, where America first, more populist direction. The people's opinion matters. We're moving in a more individualistic direction, like trying to make sure everybody has negative liberty to go with their positive liberty. Libertarianism is on the rise. And that's not just that's not partisan. That's the left libertarians, the right libertarians. People just do more than maybe ever before. They don't want to give up their social programs. They don't want to give up their Medicare, their Social Security. They don't want to give up all these good things the government does, but they also don't like the fact that they're too separated from it. They're too separated from the reality. They just see what they see on TV. They see Donald Trump talking in hyperbole. They see Bernie Sanders or Kamala Harris talking in hyperbole. You have AOC every day. It's become just a form of entertainment, a dog and pony show. And I guess for a lot of people, they tune out. I think a lot of the average American voter tunes out. If they're not interested in the entertainment factor of Trump, AOC, and all these people, they tune it out and they go, I'm looking at results. I'm looking at results. They're only looking at how it affects their life, not who wins, who looked bad. Like, if the economy is good, the president's getting reelected. That's the way it's always been. If we don't get into any additional wars, the president's getting reelected. A lot of these people out there that are voting, especially the older folk, they could give two shits about the feud between the Squad and Trump, or Pelosi and Schumer, and Trump, or any of these Republicans and Democrats that are going at it. It's like, it's fun to watch for us, the political people, the people that follow politics. But it's, a lot of it's not really, doesn't really amount to much in the long run. People like move on with their lives. It's like the pendulum swings and it swings back and forth. And as long as we don't have a major depression or recession or a war where people get drafted and blah, 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 all the worst case scenarios that can happen to a country, people just say, well, what have you done for me lately? And I say, that's good. Vote in your best interest. You know, don't let other people shame you for voting in your best interest. And I encourage everybody to do that. You know, vote the way that you think will help you. You know, got to watch out for yourself first. Got to watch out for your family, your friends first. You know, that's the idea. Thinking about all these sort of issues that have no real impact, all these wedge issues that may or may not affect you. You know, yeah, it's important to make sure that we do keep our eye on the future. We try to make things more humanistic. We try to be more loving, more caring, more involved in the lives of people. And of course, more inclusive, like that we don't discriminate, that we don't look at, you know, these archaic traditions in traditional religion or any form of belief system that hold back. You know, the separation of church and state must hold. And it's good that we're moving in that direction. But again, it's a dog and pony show, and it's fun to watch. It was fun to watch when Epstein supposedly offed himself, and then, of course, you know, Clinton body count, and Clinton's are trending, and then Trump body count is trending, and I'm like, well, you know it's coming. You know that once they start framing it as Trump related, it's gonna mean that you're gonna get that, you know, Orange Man, Epstein friend. You know, they had a falling out 15 years ago, but did Trump have him offed? It's like, yeah. Of all the people, you know, Bill Clinton having gone to the island 26 times apparently. Fact check me on that. But, you know, Trump is not the one that has the most incentive. There's like a dozen, 2 or 3 dozen other people that have more incentive that used Epstein's services. They have far more incentive than the Trump administration. I think it would have been just like the Julian Assange situation, where I say, you know, free Julian Assange. I think he's worth more alive than anything else. I don't think that he should be tortured. I don't think that he should be held. I think he should be pardoned. But I understand there is friction there because of the acts that he essentially took that compromised parts of, you know, U.S. intelligence. You know, what WikiLeaks did in 2012, 2010, and of course, you know, later on with the Vault 7, which is actually the CIA WikiLeaks Vault 7 leak is actually super important because they revealed that the CIA can ascribe a domain, a country of origin for a program. So they could say, for example, they could hypothetically say with the technology they have, if they're not deep faking to fake the security camera footage of Epstein offing himself, they could say that the Russians hacked the camera to turn off. And they can ascribe whatever it was to Russia or to China or to any country they want. That's what Vault 7 lets them do. So those 2 words, actually, Vault 7, the WikiLeaks release, check it out, wikileaks.org. Those 2 words are like the difference between something being a conspiracy theory and being a credible, you know, conspiracy and not being very credible. I think it's perfectly within plausibility, you know, plausible deniability that, yes, the deep state may have been involved in making sure that Epstein couldn't speak, couldn't rat out, or give the list of names for those that may have been involved in his rapey operations. So it could have gone either way. Again, I don't really have an opinion on it, but it's important not to, you know, fall into that confirmation that, oh, everything that seems a little far-fetched is a conspiracy theory, and I can't listen, la la la. Like, I need to stick to the script. I need to be an NPC and say what MSNPC says, because they're the experts. They're the prophets of the modern religion of media, as a subset of institutions. Like, they are. I'm going to set aside reason and just take it on faith, because I've been doing that the whole time. And if you like Tulsi Gabbard, you're a Russian spy. I mean, I don't mean to project too much on some of the disciples of the modern religions, such as censorship, social justice, global warming, institutions, moral panic, outrage culture, or, of course, celebrity. But a lot of people do think this way. They don't really, they think in associations. They have a collectivist framing of reality, and they see an association. Oh, you're in the right wing. Oh, you're in the left wing. And they go based on that. It's not a partisan thing. It's just the way that people tend to organize their own world. We only have so much time. Time is the currency, of course. And you don't want to have to listen sometimes to people that you have been told not to trust. I understand that, but I see also there is this wall of cognitive dissonance that has to be broken. Confirmation bias that has to be questioned. So I always do promote pro-information mindset. Okay, more information is better. And of course, more speech kills hate speech, which is a subjective, arbitrary definition. Anyway, it doesn't really exist. Hate speech is not defined. If you're going to get into legalism with the First Amendment, it's not even defined in the First Amendment. But yet that's a code that keeps you enslaved. Political correctness is a code that keeps you, and whoever follows it, enslaved to this dialectic. So just one more tweet for you today. When virtually the entire establishment media pigpiles on Trump, it's generally a good time to take a much closer look. Like I said, if everybody is following the same story, yeah, it could be a true story. But if it's fishy and everybody's reporting the same thing, I mean, again, you got to question everything. You got to question it. If there's any holes, question it, and then, settle on whatever seems most comfortable. Certainly don't take things at face value, because the big secrets are hiding in plain sight. It's the incredulity, the public incredulity, like McLuhan says, Marshall McLuhan. The public incredulity keeps things secret. If you can't believe that something could be, that puts you at a disadvantage to the system. They can manipulate your opinion any way they want if they believe you'll trust them. And trust that things are going to be as described on the cover of the book. Yeah, so this was kind of strange. When people were talking about North Korea, we were going into North Korea to sit down with Kim Jong-un. Chairman Kim, President Trump was going to speak with him back in July of 2018. And I say, to my fellow Americans, please keep cheering on any possible setbacks to peace talks in North Korea. The nihilists among us appreciate your support. And then I actually, for once in a very long time, I actually gave a sarcasm tag so people would understand that I was being satirical. Because I was saying, just because you don't like this president, and that's totally fine. If you don't like President Trump, that's your opinion, man. Ladies and gentlemen, take your opinion, enjoy it, love it. It's great. But I think it is a little bit nihilistic accelerationistic, even, when we say, well, I kind of want the economy to fail. I want us to go into, like Bill Maher says, I want us to go into a recession because it's Trump. I don't want Trump to win. So let's have war with North Korea. Let's have problems with Russia and Iran because I don't want Trump to be the one to take the victory. Because if he takes the victory, Orange Man might win the next election. And I go, look, if you want to vote for somebody else, go be my guest. I'm not sure who I'm voting for yet. I really hope that Tulsi Gabbard makes it in the Democratic primary. But again, I don't have any sort of illusion that that's going to happen. But again, I might. I'm in a blue state. Like, I have the most freedom probably of almost anybody out there because, my state's going blue. I can vote Green Party, Rainbow, Libertarian. I can vote for Trump. I can vote for the Democrat. I can vote myself in. It won't make a difference. It's like one of the bluest states out there. But in general, I don't like that some people are willing to root for the enemy because they don't want their political side here in this country to lose. They're willing to root against their own country, against their own, best interests, against the best interests of their fellow Americans, because they don't want this one politician to get a win. I mean, this is how 3D chess and 4D chess work. Like, this is how Trump and others, persuasion experts, some people call them wizards, others call them persuaders, whatever it might be. These people that are able to sort of manipulate the media, manipulate people, just by taking the opposite position. If Trump takes a position on something, he expects his opposition to take the opposite position automatically. If you fall into that pattern of always taking a predictable behavior, yeah, you're easier to move around the 3D chess, the 4D chess board. He just has to wait a little while, 4D chess, time to move. I mean, I want everybody to play well at this whole post-truth political game that we talk about. So, yeah, always siding. That's why I say, I don't always agree with President Trump. Obviously, I like him. I do support him, as I have supported every sitting president since I was of the age of reason. And I do appreciate a lot that President Trump has done, but he's also made a lot of mistakes. I mean, he's talking about some things right now with the gun debate, talking about red flag laws, talking about violent video games, talking about the bump stocks. That was a mistake, in my purview. So I don't like the way that our, background checks, I think that there could be maybe something done. I don't really support it. Although at the same time, I do see the utility of making sure that the mentally ill don't have weapons. But again, when you're talking about creating a list of people that can't have one of their constitutional rights, as soon as you start that conversation, you're kind of in dicey water as it is. But it's like the no-fly list as well. It's like this arbitrary list. They can say, well, it can, I don't mean to say it's a slippery slope, but it can be a slippery slope. Okay? Until the inertia will keep on going until there's a counterforce, and that's when the slippery slope ends. That's the fallacy of the slippery slope. And now I've said slippery slope 4 or 5 times, so you get the point. There was a slippery slope to me saying slippery slope that I would say it again. So, in laws, of course, it's really hard in the world of lawmaking. It's hard to take back a ban. It's hard to take back a major legislative change, as I discuss in another video that I uploaded about centralizing government. But, like I said, Trump has not always done the right thing. And so I like to be meritocratic. I like to give credit where it's due and give criticism where warranted. Make sure that when they do an A/B test, they find out either A or B, which one was the way to go. Otherwise, if I'm always using reverse meritocracy, if I'm never giving credit where it's due and always giving negative or always giving positive, well, that kind of feedback is useless. It actually holds the person back from improving their process. So it becomes a little bit closer to idiocracy when you're not giving credit where it's due. You're just giving people that you like all the credit and people that you don't like all of this derision. And that's going to lead us right to clown world. So that's about it for today's tweet video. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I am at Real Jeff Tidwell on Twitter. I'm also on Gab, Minds, Telegram, Parler, Instagram, and if you're not watching this video on BitChute, you're watching it on YouTube, please do like and subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications, and as I always say, everything I said tonight might be wrong. Or everything I said tonight might be right. Or perhaps some of it's right and some of it's wrong. Maybe the truth lies somewhere in between. So I hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time.